All right. Hi, everybody. Check my gear. How's everybody doing? Here's so another devlog follow-up video to the joint friction series that I've kind of got going on. I did the other video talking about joint friction. I've been working on it ever since, improving things, and kind of wanted to talk about that, give a little bit more detail. So this is going to be like an old school video. And when I say old school, I mean like less trying to entertain you guys and more just me rambling on about stuff that lots of people don't really care about. So if this isn't your flavor, um, so be it. And you might as well hit stop now because this one's going to be long and boring. Okay, so on to friction. I've been working with a few different types, a few different methods to do the friction. In the last video, I talked about how I was using a PD to do this, and it seems to work really, really well. This red cube, for example, is using PD friction to keep it in space here, and it works quite well. Next up, I've got another technique that I tried out, and this is like a one frame recovery technique, where it's kind of like a PD, where you've got a force that's based on how far the object is from the target, but this actually calculates the force necessary to get back to the target in a single frame, and it will apply up to a certain threshold to try to get it back there. So this technique is very responsive and seems to work really well, but it can be too aggressive and cause like vibrations and other types of issues. So an alternate technique that we've got to try. This one in the blue, this is a configurable joint, similar to the PD. Um, kind of, I guess, in concept, but instead using a configurable joint as the mechanism to do that, and with the benefit of having the solver smooth out some of the things that the PD can't do. So basically, if I had to choose just one of these, I think the configurable joint method is the clear winner, able to handle more weight, less vibrations, less issues, more powerful, more stable. Just all in all, just a better choice. The other ones still have their place. Like I said, this one is really the one step is really responsive. The PD is tried and tested. It's not very heavy as far as the code goes as well. There's a little bit more overhead with creating a joint and having the solver solve that. So it's not that far off as far as performance goes, but I think the PD could be optimized to just be a little bit faster than a little bit less performance issue than the joint based. That said, they all perform fantastic, and it's not an issue. You can run hundreds of these most likely with not too much of a problem. For more testing, I've got these items here. They correspond to the same. So the red is a classic PD, and the orange is one step recovery, and then the blue is configurable joint. So the cube that I've got sitting on these, so they're holding up their own weight, and also the cube that's sitting on them. Here, let me move the camera in a little bit. So the cubes are very heavy. They're 100 kilogram cubes. I've got one on the floor here. I was going to pick you up and show you how heavy it is, but it would, well, here, let me do it. So I've got tethers attached to it. Here's my hands in the air trying to hold these things up, and they can't because it's too heavy. So I can't pick it up. Crazy heavy. So this is just a good way to test just how much these joints, or not joints, these friction methods can handle. So here we've got the PD, and you can see that it's trying to hold it, but there's a gap here. It can't maintain, like it can't close the distance to this, and it struggles. You can see that it's got oscillations, and it struggles to try to maintain this at a good position. The one step also struggles. It bounces in the same way, a little bit higher frequency. It's able to be a little bit more aggressive than the PD can be. Both of these, however, are right at the edge of stability. If I cranked them up any higher, they would probably explode and destroy everything in the room. Okay, last we've got the last we've got the joint method. So this, like I said, uses the solver, uses the joint solver, and as such gets amazing stability as compared to the other two. So it's got better stability. It doesn't it's not so much of a gap. It's just incredibly strong. I can push on this, and it's able to hold the cube and my push, whereas these instantly you can see get displaced and or vibrate and have other issues. So okay, so we've knocked all the cubes off, and you can see just how powerful these are. Here's me yanking on this with all my might, and it displaces a bit and starts to vibrate. Same thing here, displaces and vibrates, and then the joint hardly moves at all. So it is, like I said, the clear winner with regard to this. If you amp the force necessary, like I said, for small forces, it doesn't really matter. Just use whichever one you like because it's pretty much the same thing. Okay. So what else do we got going on today? I wanted to talk about. Here, let's go over to the bread. So here we go. So this is the same bread that I was working with in the little funny video that I did. It's identical. It's just I've got the mesh transparent. The deformable mesh is now transparent, and you can see all of the individual little objects, little particles. They're not particles. I don't want to call them particles, but that's the little, I don't even know what to call them. Anyway, the whole thing is just a bunch of balls, essentially. It's a bunch of spheres that are connected to this central cube. Here, to make it easier, it's essentially a more complicated version of this, which is just a bunch of items that are jointed to a central item. In this case, I don't have any friction associated with this. This is just literally like joints connected to spheres connected to a cube, and it doesn't really require any special code or anything. And you get kind of a nice bouncy soft body effect to it, which is actually pretty cool in and of itself. I think that it gets improved when you do add friction to it, because now you get the benefit of having something like that, but you also have like a permanent deformity that you can add to it as well. So you can if this gets deformed in some strange way, then it's going to retain that position, because whatever spring forces are applied to these, the friction force can overcome that and keep it in position until it reaches some threshold where the spring force is stronger than the friction forces that are stopping it, impeding it from moving. So basically, that concept is the same as the bread, just on a higher, on more of a scale. So in fact, the bread, I didn't go into this with the intention of trying to make a bread dough simulation or anything. That obviously, that's not what I was after. This is simply a scale test of the joints. I wanted to do hundreds of these joints and see how well they performed. And ended up acting a lot like a dough. I thought that was hilarious, and so did that video on it. So it's really, really neat, especially now with the mesh being transparent and the individual objects available to view. It's really, really fascinating to me to kind of play around with this and interact with it. Really, really cool to just kind of see it in action. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to implement this if I'm, I don't, my intention is I don't really know if there's like much in the way of soft body stuff that I want to do for TFS. But I do want to make sure that the friction stuff, the stuff works really, really well for any kind of props that we've got. And if it's props that are on this scale, then hopefully that'll work well for that too. But for anything, your knobs and your buttons and your switches and your levers and your plungers and everything else, that needs to work really, really well also. So it's all the same system, right? So if I can make it work good for one, then hopefully it'll work good for another. Um, oh, here, check this out. I've got an interesting object that I've been working on. So let me figure out a good place to show this off. I guess just here in the middle. All right, so here you go. Check it out. What do you think? What is that? Some of you already know. It's a wizarding wand. Pretty cool. In fact, here, this cube that I couldn't pick up before. If I use the wizarding wand, I can't even do this with a straight face. Wingardium Leviosa. It didn't work. There we go. Wingardium Leviosa. Wingardium Leviosa. There we go. Okay, that was supposed to be funny, but that sucked. Anyway, this is a friction lock baton. It's pretty cool as an object. It actually uses the friction system that I've got to work. And it would be much easier and it would be much better to not use that at all. It would be better to just script this. But I wanted to test the friction system with a friction object, and this is a friction object. So the way that this works is that it has a latch essentially that keeps this retained inside the handle. The latch itself is scripted, but the rest of it is actually a pure physics object. So the latch is scripted and makes it so that this stuff is locked in here until a certain amount of like angular velocity is reached, and once that angular velocity is reached, then the switch pops open and unlatches the other pieces of the baton and allows them to come out. And because you've got this angular velocity and the inertia allows these to pop out with actually some force. The force forces the ends, the tubes to kind of get jammed up into each other, and causes them to lock in that open state. And they can actually be really difficult to close. So if I open this really, really softly, then it's really, really easy to close. No big deal. But if I open this with some real gusto, like that, now this has gone out, and it's now at a level of friction that's fairly extreme, to the point that I don't even know if I can close this with my hands. Like, I've got my hands moved all the way across, like, so they're crossing each other, and it's still not a force. Oh, there we go. It did close. So there we go. It's still retaining the friction despite me moving my hands like across each other. So that's pretty wild that can actually model that kind of behavior. That's pretty cool. So, friction lock baton, another useless physics object, but cool nonetheless. A very cool physics object in that it works as intended. You create a friction system and then you create an object, and oh shit, it actually works. How cool is that? So sometimes I can't get this closed at all. I can base it on my chest. But a lot of times when it's like that, you kind of have to come over here, and then this is how they actually do it in real life. You take it and you start like banging it on a table or something. to get it to close up. There we go. All right, so friction lock baton, interesting physics object. So some other interesting things. You can really take this friction stuff like to the extreme, like I've already shown with the weight bearing objects over there. So here's another one. So this one is so it's easy to move positionally, but it does not want to rotate. I mean, it's very very stiff and doesn't want to rotate. So you can see just how much like my hands are moving like a lot, and it's not going to move. I don't have the ability. The friction is so high on this. I don't have the ability to rotate this with normal like hand movement. So I have found that if I base this like on my shoulder and then use two hands at the end of the lever, then I can get it to move a little bit. There we go. And I don't know why doing that in VR makes me grunt in real life, but it does. So, and then I can get it back upright by like almost like I'm doing I don't know, grab it kind of like you're doing an ankle lock or something. Come on, here we go. I think I got it this time. Come on. There we go. There we go. All right. So, needless to say, this is very, very stiff. Very. But what's cool about that, and here I've got another one. Here's a cube that I've got. So this is like the other blue cube that's over there, except this one is cranked up to a stupid level. To the point that there's no conceivable way that I'm going to be able to move this by pulling on it. Like the hands aren't strong enough, the arms aren't strong enough. I got it. Just a little bit of motion there. I think I actually was like using my body motion, like the arms couldn't move it, but the body, like I think the shoulder locked out, and the body pulled it. That's what was happening there. Anyway, needless to say, the friction system works pretty good. But that brought up something that I thought was something interesting, and that is that there is a way to move stuff like this, and it's called a hammer. So it makes sense that if you've got something like this where you need like a really really strong amount of force over a short time interval, you should be able to move something like this, and that's just exactly what a hammer does. So I should be able to utilize I think it's like a 5-pound hammer, and sure enough, if I start to bang on this thing, then I can positionally move it with each hit, which is pretty cool. I can imagine all sorts of game mechanics that rely on forces that have to be or impulse forces that have to be generated using objects instead of something that you can do with your hands. So, and here I'll demonstrate this rotationally with this other object. Here, let me just do this first person. That'll be easier. All right, so we're in first person. I'll take the same difficult to rotate object and place it on the edge of the table here. And again, this thing is, I mean, it's really, really solid. It's not going to rotate. But I can hit it with a hammer. And sure enough, I can get it to rotate really easily. And so I think that kind of stuff is just, I think that's fascinating. That you can model something like that, and it just so happens that the right tool does the job. So I can imagine all kinds of different ways to utilize this in a game. I mean, not necessarily like having to hit stuff with hammers, but I mean, just the idea of having really cool physics objects that require a different way of doing things. So anyway, like I said, I mean, you've got wheels and joysticks and plungers and knobs and levers and all kinds of stuff that you can interact with. And now this opens up the idea of maybe having, well, here, let me run over here and grab these knives. So, and I kind of showed this kind of stuff before with the original stabbing videos, but the stab's been redone now. So before the stab mechanism used a lock on the travel axis of the stab joint. And because there was a lock there, the single frame, the first frame when an object was hit, in that first frame it measures the force that's applied to it. And if the force is enough, then it unlocked that axis and then allowed force after the initial frame to affect the object. But what that ended up doing is essentially absorbing a tremendous amount of force every time the stab joint was relocked. And that's not ideal because you couldn't like bang stuff into the table really well. So in this case, I've got this. So I've converted the stab code over to this new friction code, and now you can easily use the hammer to like bang an object into the table or whatever. So really, really cool. I'm extremely happy with it. I think the system as a whole, although it still does need some improvements, it's working really, really well. It's got a lot of promise, and I think I'm going to use it just all over the place. Like I think it's just going to be a standard part of just about every physics object I make from here on out. It's just so I don't know when it works. It's just so nice. Once you've got it set up, it's just really, really slick. So anyway, I'm trying to think of anything else. I think that might be it. Let's see. I did the bread and I did the friction baton and I did these weird objects and stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or thoughts about this concept, or things you want to do to help me improve it, yeah, let me know. I'm all ears. So as far as the bread goes and like soft body objects, I'm not too worried about trying to improve upon the soft body objects. I just want to make the friction joints better. If I can optimize those really, really well, then if I wanted to do like a soft body thing, then it would help that as well. But there are probably way more efficient ways to do the soft body stuff than what I've got going on here, which is like literally like 150 game objects are inside that bread thing. So anyway, there's better ways to do it than that, I know. All right, well, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any thoughts, and see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.